People always lived upstairs from where they ran the store or rented. And I hope we are on a trajectory to have people move back into town. Things like the Esplanade, I think, are fabulous because people don't need a car to do anything, unlike some of the outlying, where no matter what you do, you have to get in the car and go.
Very topical. In Framingham, they're building a big entertainment center on Flutie Pass across from the AMC, and they're planning to put a 6-story building with apartments above it.
In what town? Framingham. Oh, that's over there somewhere.
Richmond's near Shoppers World.
Shoplifters World, yes, I know it. Okay. Out behind, fronting on South Street, are the former stable for the Hudson House, and you know it. Perhaps that'll help. This building to the right, the old Elm Garage, was unrelated to any of this. Okay. Here we are to the Opera House. Now, if you didn't think Hudson was a class act, does Framingham have an opera house? There, put that to bed. It took us a while. Yeah, there are a bunch of posters here. Those were the internet things of the day. Took a while to figure out the actual placing and orientation of this building, but we do. Yep, we do know. Well, this is 1911. The Rosary. They actually had some plays, but this was the beginning of movies. And here we go, a good little devil. Ooh, Mary Pickford. Even if you know nothing about early movies, you know that name. Dolly of the Dailies. Well, I didn't do that one, but the Indian Ambuscade and Frontier Drama. I am going to guess that probably was not very PC movie in those days. There were obviously the bad Indians and the good cavalry. The Battle of Gettysburg. This was a monumental movie and unfortunately is lost. There are no surviving copies. It was 5 reels. It went like an hour and a half. And it was a major, major deal. Because, of course, in 1914, there still would have been some few people who actually might have been there, barely. But it was probably getting to the point like we are now related to World War II. Pretty much that generation is disappeared on us. The Perils of Pauline. Anybody remember Pauline? Somebody's shaking their head. Well, Pauline was one of these serials. I don't know, for some reason it just flitted into. When I was little, we would listen to the radio. And things like Stella Dallas and some of those other things. It was a serial. Well, like 20 or 30 of these things. And it just went on. She was going to get carried away by the bad guy right at the very end. Some magical sort of thing happened, so she vibed to the next episode. But there was quite a bit of that. But the Battle of Gettysburg was a very famous one at the time. But as they say, and the Library of Congress has archived some of the more important movies, and there aren't any for that one. None of the reels have survived. Okay, well, that's where it was. There's Sir Any Salon here to the left. So this is the bank parking lot across here's South Street, and the municipal lot where the tour starts is across the street. And behind me, excuse me, was George Gould's old place, and I believe is now a school. Okay. Well, actually, there's the fence. I put this big arrow because pre or post? Pre, way pre. I point at this building because you'll see the replacement to this building, which will be very familiar to you. Now remember when we looked at that picture and you saw the tiny corner of the fence? So that will make this later than this picture. The town hall will be up here.
Like a little church.
Well, it's an interesting house, isn't it? It's a very cute house. It is an important building, which I will say survives. That's not quite the right term for it. Ah, okay. Here is another picture of that house from the 1930s that shows the same house. This building back here, some of you will well remember, and we talked about last time. This is the Scotney Shoe Factory. That's on the South Street Municipal parking lot. Long gone. Gone since '71. The chimney, remember the damn chimney hung around forever? But this was from a flood in the late 30s, probably 1938, may have been the hurricane. But I show this because here is that building. It was moved over here in 1880. The original building was built by one of the Brighams in 1832, a very old building. And what's on its place now? Well, hang on. There's that building. Here's an aerial from 1947, which may or may not help. Here's the Scotney Building. Here is South Street, which only goes to here. It later gets extended. But there is the same building. It was a rental. It was a rental house. It was a big fire in '01. Nobody died, but kids barely got out. And of course now it has morphed into, oh, so damn smart. Oh, jeez. Gold star for you. But only one. Okay. The Horseshoe Pub is essentially built around the original building, and it's incorporated into it. On the very site that that building started out life as is now this building, or a modification of this building. And where is this building? Well, the town hall is right here, to the right. It is now Murphy's Insurance and Village Realty. But, yeah, it used to be Bergson's. But what is different now about the building? It's only a two-story building now because big fire in 1951. 51, yes. Took the top off, and it's been reconstituted as a two-story building. Here's this little driveway. I'll just mention it. I don't have a picture because the only one I saw was not very good. But if you go down this now, it's just a parking lot right out behind the building. And then behind that is the bank that you saw before, the community bank. But there's a parking building out there. And what was the building that this was the driveway for? The Central House Hotel. Yep, there's another one in there. We had several. Oh, we had a whole bunch. Yep.
A first class or a second class?
Now, Jeanette, why are you asking that? Not altogether sure.
Well, if one asks, we all want to know. Usually somebody else wants to know.
I can lie. It was probably a third class for all I know. Jeez. Okay, you remember that building with the big fat arrow that pointing to the left a moment ago? Yeah. That is the front of this wooden building. That one there. We're looking down, the river is here. We're looking down from Mount Bellevue. This hill's been named a whole variety of things. Before we go on and look at this, notice how open things are up here. And don't forget the height of land clearing for agriculture in New England peaked in 1820. I mean, by the time Thoreau came along, it was starting to revegetate in those days. So it was very early when, the mill girls came and all that kind of good stuff, and people went west and blah, blah. But at any rate, it was still quite open then. But notice we have two churches. That one is still there, the one down at the end of the street. We're going to look at churches in a moment, but here's one here. And notice there isn't a church here. But at any rate, the point of this is this building here. Here is a Sanborn fire insurance maps. These are incredibly valuable because they are very large-scale maps that show the buildings, and they were for fire insurance purposes, but they're very widely used, especially now in environmental work, to see where the buried underground tanks were and all kinds of fascinating stuff. This is 1882, but notice here, it was an open field, but then they sketched in where the Opera House was. So we know the position, because this will be Market Street here. South Street will be here. But up here, don't know if you can read it, ruins of the old block. That building, this one here, burnt in 1880. It was a building in which at least a half a dozen or more of the really important early leading businessmen of Hudson born and grew up. And there are accounts in the Brigham book about being born and brought up here, skating back here in the fields when the Assabet would flood in the wintertime, flower beds out front. It was quite a story. And apparently the entire attic was open from one end to the other, and the kids just loved to run back and forth. And of course, they all knew each other. So the next view, not exactly Hudson's finest view, but one that everybody sees. It's the back side of that. And here is the front side. And what is directly across the street? The town hall. Yeah, this goes by a variety of names, sometimes the Rice Block. Stores here, apartments on the upper two floors. Here is a Veterans Day Parade 1966. Actually, 50 years ago. And I put this one in because we're looking at the same building, and everybody who was anybody who remembered anything about anything will remember who occupied this. Friedmans Dry Goods. I can remember, you'll probably have different memories. I can remember Mother dragging me in because there were dungarees piled on the table that I'm sure had been there since the 1920s. Told to go down behind one of the tables and make sure the damn things fit. And of course, they were stiff as boards. Hudson Cleaners? Cleaners? Still there. Yep. Okay, well, this is clearly directly across the street. This is our town hall. An incredible picture. The clarity is just extraordinary. And you can blow this one up, as we have done, and it really stays. You can get the detail out of it. But really nice tracks in the street. So we can date this as probably early 1900s. Since the electric came down, I think, about 95 and lasted through the 20s. So there's a period in there by which you can. And the rest of the road was dirt. Very handsome, very clean. Unitarian Church, we'll mention here in just a moment. Bandstand. The big difference now, trees. That's one of the problems with stuff now. We have let a lot of the vegetation grow, or even encouraged it to grow up. Unfortunately, we've let some of it grow so long. I'm thinking about Main Street Cemetery, if you drive by that. That's my car. Some of those are quite mature. Okay, well, that's a question. I count 3 buildings. The obvious one is the church, the Unitarian Church, literally on the corner, 3 buildings down. All right, that's building number 1. Across the street, this building here, which I call the Brazil building, just for a handy term. If you drive down, here by Shaves, if you drive down Church Street the wrong way, and right across the street, you'll go right in the front door. That's the second building. And then the third one, the florist shop. Quite old building. But do notice something. This may or may not be obvious, but after the Great Fire, you can read through the town reports, there was an article to pull Main Street back on the north side. This does not come out quite that far now. But you can see what happens. Main Street goes straight if you went there, and it does still take that bend to the left. This was, I think, also from the Vets Day Parade, either that or the parade for the Centennial. And who are the 2 walkers? On the left, Will Balthazar, who was? He was selectman. He was a state, excuse me, he was a state rep from 63 to 78. And he was town council. Okay, and the other fellow? Howard Pratt. Howard Pratt, Hudson High School, class of 24. I only know that because Uncle was class of 25, and I went through both of those things. And probably most important, they had a summer place down next to us at Lake Boone. But I really show this picture for this. Probably one of the most famous scenes that people have fixed in their mind. And not only Webster's shoe, you can't read this even if you blow it up because there's a tree here kind of in the way, but what does it say? Morris Schindler shoes. This illustrates a really important element of Hudson. Hudson was a shoe town, manufactured shoes. We had a tannery, lots of outlets. Several of these larger shoe companies had outlets in Boston, worldwide distributors, very important in the development of Hudson. Sort of the same. See, here's the trouble with the damn sun on a Sunday morning. You got to do it early enough so you don't get to run over, but then you contend with the sun. I tried to hide behind the shrubbery, which didn't work. But at any rate, so here's the church, the Shaves, and you can, well, trees, the florist. Well, okay, that's kind of where we are. Here's Main Street, and here's that bend, okay? Here's the town hall, but we have these 3 yellow buildings here. 3 churches. Wonder why they called it Church Street. All right, the northernmost one, the Baptist Church, which does not exist anymore. It had a fire, didn't burn to the ground, but it moved. 65. The second one, which is the existing one, is the Unitarian.